what that is. So it's quite fun.
That's good to see that one of our mentors is here and he doesn't know how to operate the camera, or is it because we want us to look up your nose, Steve? Is there anything in particular you want to show us?
And there is actually some very interesting things up my nose, so I thought I'd show you that first, if that's okay. We're going to go back up there later.
Hopefully you haven't started the recording yet. Oh, you have. Oh.
Hey, let's start as we mean to go on, hey?
That'll teach me to leave my iPhone on the desk in front of the computer, and it picked up the iPhone as the camera when I logged in.
Okay, so you see so many AI note takers.
And also see a Viz of the Day person showing up as well. That's good.
Yeah.
Have not been outlearned yet, so congratulations again, Elena.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much.
You are now a celebrity, Elena. You know that.
Kind of.
Yeah, I think that's the attitude you need as well. Okay, so thank you everyone again, and thank you so much, Carl, for doing this session with us, and welcome everyone to Tableau Buddy Sandbox. This is our 4th workshop, and today we have Carl Allchin, and he's the head coach at the Information Lab, Data School, and a 5-time Tableau visionary, and also a Hall of Fame, with a strong background in financial services and data consulting. And he also serves as a board member and advisor for Infograde. If you haven't checked that out, you should. And today he's going to take us through a great session on data modeling with Tableau Prep. So I'll hand over to Carl now and stop sharing my screen as well. Thank you so much, Carl.
Okay, so I'll start presenting mine. Hello, everyone. And firstly, thank you for having me along. It's always nice to get kind of invited to these programs and see what's going on in the world and start teaching people right at the start of their journey. But actually, that is my full-time day job. But more on that in a bit. I've always loved Tableau Prep. I'm going to get that out there really early on. And the reason for that comes all the way back to having roughly 250,000 SQL tables at a large bank where I worked at for a number of years. Does anybody just want to stick in the chat really quickly? How many of those tables do you think were well documented? It's a low number. Oh, Fatima, 0. You skeptic. Too negative and pragmatic even for me. -10. Anti-documentation, Steve, making it even harder. Poor headers. 5% too. I'd love that. I would have loved it if it was at 5%. That would have made me feel even more optimistic. Fatima wasn't far off at 0. It's actually only 3 that were really well documented, which is scary in its own right, should we say. And so I spent my life with Tableau Desktop in the very early days of Tableau Desktop. Oh yeah, Steve, can you just pop yourself on mute? Because I think we're getting some audio come through. Thank you. I spent my life taking some of those SQL tables, trying to guess what the horrendous names of those tables were, working out whether I needed to use them in my analysis of me and a couple of others, Pete, hopefully Mooney. We were allowed to play across the whole bank with data to try and improve benefits in data use cases. So I spent my time always connecting those tables into Tableau from SQL, and then going and building a whole load of histograms to see what data was there and what wasn't. And then in about 2016 at the conference, as we were just mentioning TC earlier, Tableau conference, the devs put up this new program at the time called Maestro on the board, on the big presentation screen, and a little tear came out of my eye. And I'll tell you why that tear happened a little bit later on, but it's all due to Maestro that became Tableau Prep. So what are we going to cover today? Well, let's first of all, as you are maybe, let's say, newer to the Tableau ecosystem, what actually is Tableau Prep and what's it really used for? And I'll tell you some stories about the early days of when Prep came out and some of the big challenges that I saw then, but also see now as my job is teaching people from scratch pretty much Tableau skills, and a lot of that focus is on the preparation stage of it, which I think gets glossed over because we all love the sexy, gorgeous, lovely visuals and interactivity that people can come up with. But the challenge of that is there's often quite a lot of work unless you prepare your data well. And that's really where Tableau Prep comes in. We'll talk briefly about who I am. We'll talk and focus on some of that cleaning and transforming work and starting to have a look at Tableau. But one of the biggest things I find when I teach is the biggest revelation is what is the right shape of data. So I'll let you have a think about that as we just talk through this. And then I'll talk to you about the process of how to kind of go about data visualization, data preparation in the best possible way. Because again, that's not always clear and it gets lost really quickly if we're not careful. So what is Tableau Prep? Well, Tableau Prep actually kind of has three components these days. There's Tableau Prep Builder, so the on kind of computer application, just in the same way that we have Tableau Desktop. We also have Prep Builder. So Prep Builder allows us to go through that ETL process that we talk about quite frequently in data. So extract, transform, and load. Even if these days we see a lot more ELT, so extract, load, then transform, because data lakes have allowed us to go and just dump files in, and we'll sort them out later once we know what we want to do with them. Tableau Prep can still play a role in that. So that transform stage at the end or in the middle of the process is really where prep's being used by, dare I say, lay people. So not your IT developers at all, but when I started out in this career path in about 2007, 2008, I started working with data. Before that, as a history and politics student. That really with trying to do anything preparation-wise then, it was always go and send the request to IT. Ironically, in my first company, it was to then go and get it done within Informatica that now Salesforce has bought as well. So we'll see how that plays out over time. But Prep, unlike desktop, was actually built for the web. So the actual in-browser experience that you have within server or cloud is actually much smoother. Very rarely you can tell the difference of, am I using the on laptop application that is Prep Builder versus actually using that same functionality, building your flows, going through that ETL process, actually in server or cloud compared to doing it on your own laptop. There's actually some really good benefits to doing it on server and cloud. We can talk about those and touch on those a little bit later. But with Prep Conductor, that's really the server-based application that is the management tool over the top of this. So whether that's you upload your flows and then Prep Conductor allows you to go and actually run those on a certain schedule, or actually linking those flows together. So you take some really big, chunky, horrible tasks and break them down to something that's much more manageable. And again, with the way that Tableau server and cloud runs with the backgrounder, actually breaking those tasks up can be a really great thing to go and help the process flow more smoothly, but also, get the most important bits of the jobs done first. So what do we do in Prep? Really, yes, it's the ETL process, but what does that actually boil down to on a day-to-day basis? It boils down to cleaning, reshaping, and working with multiple data sources. What do we mean by cleaning? It's trying to get all of those values nice and structured in a way that just makes sense for Tableau. We know that when we deal with strings, your computer is going to go and read each of those individual characters and the position in that string that character is in. Again, we'll come back to that later when we start looking at grouping within Prep. But ensuring that you've got clean data just makes everything else easy. Again, I go back to my early days of actually starting to use Tableau in 2012. And it was actually quite a challenge to use it on a day-to-day basis when somebody else had set up that data source for me and it wasn't right. It's when we used to use grouping to go and fix data errors and sort out hierarchies that have been broken or due to restructures. It's really painful, in all honesty. So actually going about that cleaning process and having a tool that we can go and see the data as we clean it, look at the effects of it, take things in a step-by-step process, that makes our life so much easier. But actually, it's just not about cleaning and getting the kind of right values in place. It can be about reshaping data. And that's why we'll talk about the shape of data again a little bit later on. But changing that structure of your data can actually make your analysis so much easier. As much as I like and love Workout Wednesday and my various colleagues that have contributed to that over the years, sometimes it teaches us to kind of do workarounds on situations that, quite frankly, we shouldn't actually work around. We should go back to the data preparation layer and reshape the data to allow us to do the analysis that we want to in the way that we want to be able to do it. So that ability to reshape data through either pivoting or aggregation is a great skill to have. So again, another reason why learning data preparation is really important. And the final piece, multiple sources. As the famous phrase is coined, data is the new oil, as Clive Humby of Dun Humby fame. And I've actually met Clive quite a few times. He used to come in and see me at the bank I used to work at because my boss and him used to be colleagues. And I never realized that it was him who said the phrase until I used it in one of my books and had to find out who it was. But that all comes back from, obviously, we're all swimming in data. We all know it. That's why we're here. The value of data is absolutely undeniable, but actually only if you can use it. And if we can go and pair it together with those existing sources that we have within our organizations or roles, then we can get some really powerful insights. We can take that analysis on to that next level from where we have at the moment, and we can just go and start unlocking really difficult things from before and make it really easy. Obviously, Tableau now has within desktop the logical relationship model. Pros and cons to that, if I'm really brutally honest about it. In so many ways, it's lowered the barrier to entry of people being able to go and stitch data sources together, but you need to understand what's happening behind the scenes to really make sure that you're not potentially stumbling over issues with that. So I used to do a lot of work at the bank that would then be sent to regulators. I had to be assured that the numbers I was sending were right. It's really difficult to do that when you have a logical model in place. So being able to do joins and unions and know what the data source you're fully pointing to and be able to reconcile against it is super, super important. So getting used to handling multiple sources of data is a great thing. We won't go too deep into that today because conscious we just have an hour to work through this. So why am I talking to you about it? Another big picture of me, apologies. It always feels weird now that you've seen two of me, let alone my headshot down the bottom corner talking to you. I'd spent 10 years in financial services, smashing my head against a brick wall. I went through a graduate scheme, saw the power of data when everybody else felt like it was just a dirty, horrible word that nobody wanted to touch. And then thankfully, those days are gone. Data has now been seen as a great asset to be able to go and kick on and stop us making a whole load of mistakes that, decisions used to be made much more on gut instinct and still are today in a number of organizations. But the more that we can go and create data-informed decisions is great, let alone before getting to the days that are coming where data-driven decisions will be made more and more and more due to AI. But after that decade in financial services, I wanted to stretch my wings a little bit. So that's when the Information Lab, long-standing Tableau partner, one of the biggest resellers of Tableau in the world. I knew the team quite a lot when they were tiny, and I joined as member 14. We're now about 1,500 people worldwide. So the company's grown a lot since then. As mentioned, I've been a Tableau visionary for a long time, so I know my ways around the tool, not just Tableau prep. I know a lot about desktop as well. That's why I wrote a book on communicating with data. So the visual side of it, as much as my first book, Tableau Prep Up and Running, was where I started my publishing. So trying to write a book about not just Tableau Prep as a tool, but actually for anybody to be able to go and use it, because that's the ethos of Tableau Prep behind the scenes. And my final book, Data Curious, released a little while ago now, just before, while my son was very, very young. So it scarred me for life of trying to write any more. But that's aimed at leaders just who are less comfortable with data in your organization, trying to understand what they can do to make you as the data person's life easier, but also empower themselves to make better decisions along the way. Enough about me. Let's talk about Tableau Prep, because that's the thing that we want to talk about, right? And the easiest way to talk about these things is to actually just go and see it. So let me jump out of my slides and let's jump into Tableau Prep. So for those of you who haven't seen Tableau Prep before, and I'm guessing that could be some of you, because not every organization has packaged it from an IT perspective and made it available, even if it is covered within your Tableau Creator license, etc. It's a great, easy to use tool, especially once you've got used to using Tableau Desktop in the first place. One of the benefits of Prep as well that I'll mention right here, right now, is it lowered the barrier to entry, not just from those folks who are using Informatica or coding in SQL back in the days, But even tools like Alteryx, which were one of those early tools that allowed more business folks to go on this kind of process of doing their own ETL or doing some kind of preparation and analytics work through drag and drop tools rather than having to code. That was a good step on, but Prep's then kind of made things really so much more simple. We'll see that as we go through this, so I'll try and highlight that. As with Tableau Desktop, everything starts with connecting to data, really similar experience as to what you have within Tableau Desktop. And we can go and pick up an Excel sheet and we'll start working with that. Now, just to kind of explain what I'm about to use, I'm going to go and use one of my prep and data exercises. If you've not heard what that thing is, then it is on my t-shirt. If I go up enough, there we go, prep and data. But it's also a weekly challenge that myself and a guy called Jonathan Allenby set up to allow people to go and practice. So as I mentioned, I was a history and politics student originally, was not of the data world, dare I say. And it was doing certain grad placement during my graduate scheme that suddenly kind of showed me what the power of data could be and allowed me to play and start developing more skills within it. One skill that I found it really difficult to find space to play and grow was in data preparation, because strangely within an organization, most of them don't want you just to play with their data sets, creating new data sets that they've got to go and clean up later, let alone producing things incorrectly. So what we did with prep and data is to go and create a space for people to go and play, go and learn, go and test out their skills in the space, work on what is the logic behind the scenes of this. So we've done that through creating loads of challenges, about 300 now. And I released them more sporadically. This used to be a weekly challenge that we did, but a development in prep slowed down a little bit. Salesforce took it on. I think that might be changing soon, but we'll see with announcements at the conference. But also running out of ideas. So I didn't want to repeat stuff just for the sake of it. So what I'm going to take you through today is not something for you to follow along. I'm going to be doing certain things at a little bit of a pace, much more than I would do if I was teaching a class and getting them to follow along, sorry. So I'll take you through one of the challenges. Just watch me do it. I'll talk about different features of prep as we go through. But the premises of all of the prep and data challenges is we set the scene, give you a data set to download and just go and plug into Tableau Desktop. I'll show you that one in a minute, but then we also show what the output is and also how many rows and columns that we're expecting to get. All right. So in this case, our week 2 challenge is when I was traveling to Edinburgh for the weekend to go and see a friend who weirdly had just come back from Antarctica. And yes, you did hear that right, Antarctica. So she was going to go and see her parents in Scotland. So we decided to meet in Edinburgh. So I wanted to check out what the weather was. Really, the story behind this is exactly that situation, apart from Tableau Prep had only just come out, and I wanted to see how far it could go. So I actually built this data set to intentionally mess with Tableau Prep and see what it could actually do. So the input of this data set is a whole load of cities. You'll notice it's just really Edinburgh and London. A whole load of metrics about the weather, so whether it's going to be rainy, whether it's going to be cold, and as it was February, the answer is yes to both. But we've got different metrics and different measures within here, our values, and we've got some dates of when I was going to travel. So how can we go and tidy that up and get that ready for use? Well, that is where Tableau Prep comes in. We load the data in by just bringing the actual sheets, if you're connected to an Excel, that you want to use. And really the secret behind Prep is the 3 panes that we'll talk through. So we have this flow pane at the top. The data pane on input is on the right-hand side, but you'll see in a clean step in a second, goes to the bottom. And the profile pane that I'll talk about quite widely as we go through this in the middle. Flow pane is this kind of logical flow of how we take our data from input all the way through to output at the end. So taking that kind of initial extract in the ETL sense, we're going to go and do a whole load of transformations in the middle, and then we're going to go and save the data somewhere, load it to somewhere that we're going to go and do some analysis on it. I won't go into every nuance of prep because that means I'd fly through this way too quickly, but I'll touch on kind of some of the major features and just give you enough of a clue of how to play. You'll notice on the flow pane, we have this ghosted out step right at the top. This came from the prep devs pretty early on seeing that everybody was going to go and connect to their data, but then they wanted to see their data before they did anything else. Has prep loaded the data, let alone actually what's in it sometimes with the files that we get sent. So if you go and click on that clean step, what actually happens is we go and start to see the data. And the way that we see the data within prep is not within the views, as we do with Tableau Desktop, but with this profile pane in the middle of the clean step. Now, what we've got is a column for each of my data fields in my Excel sheet. And we do have the data interpreter if you still need to use that to go and clean up that initial load to get those headers to the top first row and then all the data sit underneath. We get a little profile of what's going on with our data. We can see these links of these green bars behind our values. There's actually a row count of how many of those values exist within the data set. We can see all of the different data that we've got. So apparently 13 different cities, even though I should have had data about London and Edinburgh. We can see that we've got our different metrics, got some issues going on within here. And we can see the date range that we cover and also some rogue values that are sitting within our data set. So let's go about trying to tidy this up and get this ready for analysis in the best possible way. So the first thing that I've noticed is this kind of rogue metric, number, value, and date that also sits within date. So if I go and select that, what prep does is it highlights as it goes through the data where those other highlighted values are. That highlighted value means it's on the same row. So any of those rows that has date in the date column is highlighted. And if I jump back into the Excel and looked at what this would be, it's actually we've got two separate tables of data on the single Excel sheet that we're loading in. So we've got two sets of headers. They're exactly the same in each, so we don't need to get rid of it. So just like anything in Tableau, right-click, exclude, and it's gone. Now, also like desktop, you haven't actually gone and changed anything in the underlying data source. This is why prep is a great space to play, because it's going to go and allow you to work through the flow and then save that output somewhere else to make sure that you got the right stuff before changing anything in terms of the underlying source. With our data, we can go and change some of these values because it had a string within. Everything now has set itself to a string, so we can go and set our values to whole numbers. We can set our dates to go and be our dates. And just in the same way how Tableau Desktop goes and handles dates really fluidly, so does prep. So we can just stay in the flow of what we're actually doing. Now, we've got two big issues with this data set. One is the actual structure of the data set, that for each of my metrics, and we'll talk about the right structure of data later, we should have an individual column per metric. We don't. We've got our metrics stacked on top of each other here. That makes that analysis so much harder, that you'd have to write a whole load of if statements to go and say, well, if metric equals max temperature, then I want to go and bring the value in, and that'd be our max temperature column. No point doing that. We can just do a pivot instead. But we've also got this other issue, which if anyone's spent any time with data sets that have either come in from third parties or just haven't come from well-produced sources, should we say, you'll spend your life working with strings. Now, this could be a boatload of if statements and case statements to go and tidy this stuff up. It could be grouping within Tableau Desktop. The list could be endless. But one thing that Tableau Prep came with right from the early days was this kind of ability to group data in different ways, but do it through the use of algorithms. So where we find those is within the city field. We should just be able to go and tidy the stuff up to Edinburgh and London. Now, as I mentioned, I was trying to trick prep when I first did this. So when I set up this data set, I tried to make these values pretty much as hard as possible, that they'd still be recognizable, but really only just. Like I've even done a password version of Edinburgh, basically. Let's see how prep handles that. Under our three dots, so what's known as the ellipsis menu, at the top of each of our columns, for city, I can go down to group values. And this is when I can go and start to tap into those algorithms. Now, I could do manual selection, but let's imagine this is thousands of different city values rather than just one, just 12 different ones that we have at the moment. And we've got three different algorithms that we can use to go and tidy this thing up. We can use pronunciation, so how the word is said in the language of the domain of your laptop. That's a mouthful. I used to think it was just English, but then I was teaching some of my French colleagues and they got different results to me. And that's because Prep notices the domain of the laptop is different and it uses a different pronunciation logic to go and tie how that word would be said in that domain. We can use common characters, so where the actual characters within the string are similar, they're just in different positions within that string. Or spelling, the same characters exist within mostly the same position. There's just the odd character that's different, and occasionally in a different position. So let's go and see how prep handles this. And I'll go through exactly as I did the first time that I ever did this. If I go and click on pronunciation, I started laughing to myself. I beat prep. We've got 4 values coming back, not 2. Edinburgh, spelled correctly. London, spelled correctly. My password version of Edinburgh snuck through. And I also have an O'Donnell. So the correct letters for London just fall in the wrong order. What's actually happened here is if I go and click on Edinburgh, you can see what's going on. It's pulled together those different values for Edinburgh. And what it's done is it's chosen the correct spelling, i.e. the spelling that was most common, as the value to lead with. I could change it by double clicking and tapping into that and just re-editing, but I think Prep's picked the right logic here, that most often the correct spelling will be the right one that you'll find in the data more than any others. So just go with that. Same's happened to London, but a couple exist on the outside. Now, do I say that Prep's failed and laugh? No. I can go and click done, and let's go and try the others. Doesn't mean that I have to reset. I can just go and keep building on top of this. Because the benefit of Tableau Prep is everything is happening sequentially. So you can control the order that things happen in rather than battle with the order of operations like we constantly have to do within Tableau Desktop. That was one of the big advantages where Francois Argenstat and the team who were leading Tableau Prep and the development of it took everything out of that data source window within Tableau Desktop and moved it into a separate tool, because there's just very different ways that we actually go about building this stuff when we think about data preparation rather than visualization and analytics. Let's go and try common characters. And if anybody wants to take a guess which one gets wrapped in, it's that O'Donnell spelling of London, so the right characters, but just in the wrong order. So that common characters algorithm is doing exactly what it should do. And click done. And then last but not least, I can go and use spelling, and that will go and wrap in, hopefully, yep, my password version of Edinburgh. It's a loose, accurate spelling, but we can actually see what Prep's done. Again, if any eagle-eyed folks among you, let me just zoom in, you'll see this grouping control that we have at the top of a couple of the different grouping algorithms. This describes how sensitive we want the algorithm to be. We've turned it down a bit, or Prep turned it down itself, actually, to go and capture, because it's, as a user, I'm taking 3 values and I'm saying, hey, I want to go and group this together. It probably tried and said, no, you still got 3, Carl, if I use it in the middle grouping. So actually, let's go and make sure that we get 2, tap back the sensitivity algorithm a bit, and we'll get to the point where what is that password version of Edinburgh the most closest to? It's closest to Edinburgh, the correct spelling. Click done. And we have our city field cleaned up. Now, in any other tool, whether I'm using SQL or a nice interface like Alteryx, that task is really, really freaking hard. So having that ability just to go and use those groupings makes life so much simpler for me. So I'm in a place where actually I'm getting to a good state with this data set. But now we need to go and handle that pivot. Now, with a pivot, we can either go and take a whole load of columns and shift into rows to reshape our data, or we can take a whole load of rows and make them into columns. Well, in this case, we want to go and take each of our metrics and make as a column. So we're going to do what's classed as a rows to columns pivot. Now, to do that, it can only take one field to become our new headers. And kind of we've got our headers split across 2 different fields here, metric and measure. Temperature is measured in Celsius, so is the minimum temperature. Precipitation measured in millimeters of rain, although with how wet the UK is sometimes, maybe that should be centimeters or meters. And then wind speed in miles per hour, because we love in the UK mixing up imperial and metric just to drive everybody insane. But in this case, I want to go and put that metric and measures together. So we're going to do that as a calculation. Now, just hover here quickly. As you're on kind of the Buddy Sandbox program, you'll start working with level of detail calculations and more of the analytical calcs, so what we class as table calculations within desktop. But for now, we're just going to go and hit on custom calculation and build a calculation for ourselves. And what I'm going to do is just go and enter a space between our metric and our measure. And I'll tell you what, let's be really posh today. Let's go and actually wrap everything in terms of our measures within parentheses. And this is combining those two headers together. A really nice touch within prep is because everything's sequential, I can actually go and use the same field name that I'm already using. We can't do that in desktop because not everything's sequential. We don't always have control of that. Where because we're taking this field called metric, where we just have max temperature, for example, I want to add on Celsius to it, I can still call that field metric because the result of that will now go and actually overwrite. So Tableau's coming up with a warning here going, Carl, are you sure this is what you want to do? Yes, it is. So I can go and apply and close. And then this metric field will now be available with our measure attached. So I can just go and remove that field from our data set. So yeah, calculations, you'll have noticed exactly the same interface as what we see within desktop. There are some differences in terms of how aggregation is done. But again, maybe I'll come back at a later point for intermediate or advanced Tableau prep where we can talk about that. Now, why did I say that prep lowered the barrier to entry compared to tools like Ultrix and other tools in the data preparation space with the user interface? Because it basically boiled stuff down to about 10 different steps. So we saw that so far we've been working this clean step, which is really like the Swiss Army knife of where you're going to go and work. Loads of different things that you can do, cleaning up dates, splitting data fields apart, dealing with data types and pulling out those different parts or truncating dates in that way. Lots of different things going on with our clean step. If we actually need to go and scaffold our data, and again, that's another great tab to look into if you haven't before, but scaffolding is that ability to go and split a single row of data into multiple rows of data so we get multiple instances of something. So let's say I've got an individual row that has a week of data within it. I need to go and apportion that value across all 7 days of the week and have daily data. So I could go and do that by adding 6 additional rows into that existing row that we have already. So we've got 7 rows to cover the 7 days of the week and add on individual day increments as we do that. The aggregation piece is where our calculations do differ somewhat. So we're going to go and aggregate data by saying how we want to go and aggregate sum, min, max, count distinct, etc. But we say what level we do that on. So really what we've got there, that aggregation is going to go and use this term group by. Again, something that we don't have a massive amount of time to get stuck into today, but it will give you that idea of how to do it if you go and dive into some of the how-to posts that I'll talk about later. We've got pivoting, which I'll come back into a second because that was what we're going to do. We've got joins and unions. We can also write R and Python scripts and go and place those into steps within prep. So if prep doesn't have some of the functionality that you want, but you can code those yourselves and share those with colleagues and clients, then you can actually go and use the scripting step for that. And then we have Einstein prediction. So using that Salesforce engine to do that, but we need to have the right licensing to do that. So I kind of often skip past script and prediction. And obviously we need to go and output our data at the end of this. But for now, we're going to go and do a pivot and set this up. Each of the major steps, we have a slightly different interface. Many of them are same and similar enough that you'll work your way around them really quickly. With the pivot, we just need to say which type of pivot we're doing. So at the top right of that middle pane, we're just going to go and switch over to our rows to columns. And we're going to go and drop into that top box what we want our new headers to be. So every individual value and metric will become an individual column in our data set. And then what do we want to go and put in those columns? That's what we go and drop into the bottom section. That's going to be our values. If I did have potential duplication, I'd want to be careful about the aggregation that we go and apply to these values. But I know I've only got 1 for 1, so we're all good on that front. Now, seeing the results of your pivot can be quite hard in this space. So again, what you'll often find that you'll do within prep is go and add another clean step, and we can see that we've got each of those 4 metrics have their own columns now, as well as our city and our date. Some people still love to go and have your discrete fields, that categorical data at the start of your data set, and then have the measures off to the side of it. The reason why prep puts anything over to the left is because you've just worked on it, so it assumes that you want to see it to be able to go and check it first of all. So that is our clean data set. We're good to go. Where we can now go and take that is go and output. And in prep, we can either go and write out to either a file, and our file choices are either hyperfiles, so bespoke for Tableau, Excel, or CSV files. We can go and write to databases. And there's a good list of databases that you have access to now in terms of Snowflake, Teradata, SQL Server, BigQuery, Databricks, etc. We could go and push to Tableau server. So this is where you can go and connect and sign into your server or cloud instance and go and write your data source to there. Or alternatively, you can push it onto CRMA Analytics or Data Cloud to other Salesforce products. Today, I'm just going to go and write a hyperfile, and I'm just going to go and drop it in my normal location. So as soon as I go and run my flow, then that's going to go and write my data set, and that's done that in a second. So again, not struggling to work with this size data because it's pretty small at the end of the day. So I can now go and pick up that hyperfile and start using it. But what if I didn't know if my data source was ready? Again, we as Tableau people, we love to go and see the data to understand whether it is the right stuff or not. Well, a lovely little feature within Prep is any of the steps that don't have multiple data sources coming into it, we can actually go right click on it and go and select preview and desktop. And what Prep will do is write a little temporary hyperfile of our data source, and it should go and load this up into Tableau desktop for me if all goes well. Let's see what happens. Probably thinking about it. I'm hoping it thinks about it a bit harder. My laptop's clearly on a go slow. It's had enough and it's only Wednesday. It's not a good sign, is it? Or maybe my desktop's just crashed. That's a good sign, isn't it? Oh, it has. Desktop's died. All right, let's try and do that again. Start it from scratch. Let's see if it behaves this time. There we go. Coming back to life. All right, the data's loaded in. As you can see, it's got a crazy, crazy file name. So if I ever see file names like that, I know that someone's just using their preview from desktop rather than actually saving their data properly. But we can have all of our normal date functionality. In this case, let's do monthly, yeah, why not? And then let's go and see where it's going to be wetter. Unsurprisingly, in Scotland in February, it is wetter than it is in London. So I know that I needed to pack a coat at that point. But the analysis is so easy to do that I can go and jump out, have a look at the preview, build whatever views I need to build to test that I've got the right data before actually going and writing out the values into a data source that I can then go and pick up and use, or I can send off to my colleagues to use if they need it too. So that's a whistle-stop tour of Prep. I know we're near like the full extent of what it is. We could touch on parameters. We could touch on multiple data sources at other times, but yeah, conscious we've only got about 20 minutes left just to talk about a few more aspects of why do you want to spend your time learning Prep in the first place. So jumping back into the slides, how do you go about improving your skills? Well, I'm going to advocate for Prep and data. So we created this primarily due to Alltrix having their own weekly challenges, and it was a regular kind of piece that Alltrix would send out a challenge, people would use it, but it was very Alltrix specific stuff. I didn't want to create Tableau specific stuff in return. I wanted to go and create a space where people could just go and learn. And what we're seeing with Prep and data is it's not just Tableau Prep skills. Clearly all the challenges can be done on Prep, and that's why we put the solution post too. But what we're really doing with it is just creating a space for people to learn data preparation skills, whether it's learning how to code Python or SQL in the first place. You can absolutely use these challenges to do that. As I mentioned earlier, we've got about 300 of them now, so we cover a really broad range of skills. But we do it to simulate those real-world situations you're going to find yourself in. So hopefully that those situations don't just feel like we're trying to make you jump through hoops for the sake of it. We're doing it for a reason. But what happens if you get stuck? Well, on the site, we have got a whole load of how-to posts. And these are the individual posts that actually went and formed the 53 chapters of my first book. And you can dive into the detail of not just how to think about data preparation, but actually what are some of the technical skills you need along the way with a few walkthroughs as you go. There is a more modern site, prepanddata.com, where I actually finally got some cash and bought my own URL. I've also got these things called recipes, which are just following along some of the newer functionality that came out in Prep. So you can go and build out of those and follow along with what the idea is rather than having to do those challenges from scratch yourself or just having to learn on the fly. So yeah, if you want to take your prep skills further, that's absolutely a great place to go. The solution posts are on the challenge index, where we list off all 300 odd challenges. There's a blog post walkthrough, but there's also a video walkthrough done by Jenny Martin, another Tableau visionary. So what's my final couple of pieces of advice for you all? The first one is, why are we doing this in the first place? Well, it's to go and get the right structure of data. So what do I mean by that? Well, I won't ask for hands up or anything else like that, but who's heard that long and thin is the right data structure for Tableau? Because actually it's not. I catch my cohorts at the data school out with this continually. If you have long and thin, as we just did with the Edinburgh and London data, it's one of the reasons why I use it. It becomes a bit awkward if we have to do that analysis without having those separate columns for each metric and measure that I can just go and drag around and analyze the way that I want to. And what I often found was with longer and thinner data, people would then take those columns that contain the metrics and have to write a load of if or case statements to be able to do that. They're actually making it harder for people to do it, let alone people are having to understand how to write if and case statements, which not everybody can. Still to this day, the education system does need to catch up still. So the right structure I think you should look for is kind of 4 individual characteristics. Number 1, an individual column or data field for each category or measure. So for every individual category and every individual measure you have in your data set, try and get them each into their own column. That's going to make your analysis so much easier. That might seem really obvious, but I've said this to people before and they went, oh, that makes sense. Oh, so is that why we do loads of splits? Yeah, it is. We want to go and have one data type for each of those columns, because otherwise you're going to lose all of the rich functionality that you would have within tools like Tableau. So if you don't have your date field set as a date, then you can't use all of those date parts and truncated dates, or suddenly changing that date to how many Saturdays did we have data for? We can very easily do those calcs with that right-click and conversion of those dates. The third characteristics is having a single date column where possible. By that, I don't mean in classic Superstore senses that we have our order and ship date and we'd smush those together in the same field. Nope. If we've got different dates in that regards, then they can stay as separate columns. But I think we've all been on the receiving end of those data files. Often they're Excel and they're from third-party suppliers, where you have a column for January, a column for Feb, a column for March, and guess what? Next month, you're going to get a column for April. It's really difficult to deal with those and keep your analysis that just updates and runs on the latest data. So that's where we're going to go and want to go and take a columns to rows pivot and get a single date for those columns, and let's have the values sit alongside them. But the overarching rule of data for me is an individual row should be an individual recording or should be an individual record of whatever we're trying to capture by that data set. Try and make that row as complete as possible. But the real secret to understanding everything from LODs to doing some great analysis fundamentally is understanding the granularity that your table's at. So what does each of those individual rows or records actually represent within your data set? So if you do have a record that's then split across multiple rows, you're going to have a nightmare of a time to try and deal with that. So where possible, get all of those details that you need on a single row of data, and you'll make your life so much simpler for yourself. What's the process? What do you need to think about when going about this work if you are new to all things data prep? Well, I've got a planning process. I've linked it at the bottom of the slide, and I've sent the link to the slides out to you all. 4 from people in there already, so thanks for diving in. But one of the revelations when we started doing the prepping data exercises was even some great Tableau desktop users found it really difficult to wrap their head around what they needed to do and when. So I took a few steps back, and after teaching for a while, it boiled down to kind of a 4-step process that I've captured 3 here, and I'll talk about the 4th at the end. Number 1, go and understand what your actual input is. So getting to know your input. Get hold of the actual input itself. So don't just trust how Tableau is connecting to the tool where possible. Go and see what's in that input data and then know how it's connecting to Tableau. Is it connecting into prep as a category? So dimensions or measures in that sense. How is it being smushed together into different fields or being pushed together into individual fields? So taking that time to get to know the actual input is really key. Also, just go and work out what you might want to start doing with it. But actually spending time getting to know your input and actually sketching it out. So if you could provide a simplified sketch to someone, say, hey, this is what's in the data set, what would it include? I try and color code my sketches. And again, you'll see the bigger versions of these sketches within the blog post. Blue and green, where are my measures? Where are my categories within my data set? Also capture a few of those values to start to work out what you might want to do with them. But ultimately, the secret of data prep is knowing what you want to do with the data. That's both in terms of what questions are you trying to answer, because you can actually structure data in many ways and still be right. It just depends on what you actually want to do with them. The classic example of that is survey data. So Steve Beckler, very early Tableau user, king of survey data. Emma White, one of my colleagues, also amazing when it comes to knowing how to structure survey data in the best possible way to allow you to do the easiest analysis possible. But actually all tasks, if you can really get into what are the requirements that I've got, go and question the why behind it to make sure that you're really bringing in the right data at the right level of granularity. So you can go and sketch an output to know what you're trying to form. That's going to help you massively. By doing that, you can go and start thinking about some of those transitions and transformations you're going to need to make. Because the fourth step is then actually just going and doing it and working your way through. Again, more details within the how to plan prep, or plan your prep, sorry, blog post. But it's definitely a stage where I still see lots of my cohort folk, even though I just use the word plan and granularity quite a lot, the word plan quite a lot, people think, oh, I can just do it. I can do it faster than I can plan it. Let me tell you, it never works out that way. So take that 5-10 minutes, work through what your plan is of how you're going to go about doing this, especially while you're new to the tool, because you can easily get lost within a tool, and it's easy to get lost in the prep process because there are multiple different ways to do this. So if you plan your prep out and then when you get stuck, work through it in the tool as far as you can. And it makes asking for help a lot easier from more experienced colleagues, but it also makes Googling what you're trying to do a lot easier. And hopefully you'll get pointed back to the prep and data site or something like that to go and get that help, because that's the driver's Tableau community, right? There's loads of great help out there. But what would your development look like? Just thought I'd throw the slide in at the end to talk about what I typically see from people who stick their shoulder behind the wheel on this and really try to learn it. Well, what should you do this week? Go and try a prep and data exercise. You could do 2019 week 2. You've seen me do it. You've got the recording. How to do that. Some of you have got the AI transcripts from this to go and capture how I went about it. Go and replicate it. See what you can do with prep. Over that next kind of 2, 3, 4 months, a really good thing to do is just keep doing exercises. Within the challenges, within the challenge index, you'll see the more recent years. At the start of every year, we have an introductory month, an intermediate month, and then we get into some more of the advanced challenges. I think, in 2023, we did a whole month of advanced challenges. Work through those introductory challenges when you first get going. Then when you start to feel comfortable with prep, move on to those intermediate ones. And that's going to go and build your confidence with the tool, but also with the skill set. Because like I say, it is very different from doing the visualization part, but it is so empowering once you get it right. And longer term, don't just stay within Tableau prep. Use these skills that you've developed to go and have a look at learning SQL or learning Python or playing in both, actually. They're both really, really key skills where, at the data school, we now do a data engineering extension where somebody is using Python and SQL skills to go and take their data skills further than even the kind of depth that we already teach. So that skill set is becoming more and more sought after. So form the basics, learn the basics in a really nice, friendly and iterative tool like Tableau Prep. And then longer term, absolutely go out and explore the world a little bit further and learn some different ways of going and doing things. All right. And at that point, I'm going to stop because that leaves just a few minutes for questions if anybody's got any. But ultimately, thank you for listening. Thank you for kind of paying a bit of interest in prep. Like I say, it can be hard, but it is well worth that effort if you can get stuck into it. You will make your life easier and you'll make your colleagues' lives a lot easier too.
Yeah, I totally agree. At least that's one of the most fun courses I'm doing on Tableau Prep is to see people, oh my God, we can do this. I don't have to go somewhere else because you're limited in desktop to do a lot of things.
Absolutely. Has anyone got any questions? Happy for you to stick them in the chat or just take yourself off mute and ask.
Thank you, Carl, for very informative sections. I really love that, and thank for the demo section, so I can know how to do with the Tableau prep. Some of my question would be, can we connect with the live data that I see in your demo? We connect with the Excel file, but in reality, lots of data come from the live data set, SQL script to cut down the data and upload on the Tableau server. Can you share about the insight?
Yeah, absolutely. So just in the same way that you use connections into Snowflake, Databricks, in Tableau Desktop, you're doing exactly the same with prep. So prep is just pointing to that data source. It's reading the latest data that's there in and using that. I think the only thing I'd say is be careful about the term live, because as soon as anything's in the database, it's how live is it? But also, if you're then going to go and transform it, that's also going to add some time onto that truly being live. I used to work in an investment bank, so live really meant 0.001 second. I've also worked on customer complaints data, which meant the live data was, well, the complaint happened 3 weeks ago, but it's just come into the database, so it's live, right? So it's that juggle. But ultimately, to answer your question, can you point it against multiple different data sources, including databases, data lakes, etc.? You absolutely can. It's exactly the same as desktop, same credentials that you use. So in my Barclays land, that was pointing back to Teradata. So using my Teradata credentials, and then full access to be able to go and work with the data from there.
And how about the maximum rows that the Tableau prep can work with?
That's a great question. It's based on how much your laptop can handle or your computer can handle. So that's the joy of having the in-browser editing on server. So with server, they're built to be a bit more robust than our laptops, even though the Information Lab provide me with a lovely MacBook. I'm not saying anything bad about it. But really, it's that how much can your computer handle? Prep is very memory hungry. It's going to want to have as much memory to work with as possible. So yeah, it's over to that as to what it can do. One of the benefits of prep is it does sample the data automagically, as my colleague Andy Kriebel would used to say. So with what prep does is it will go and look for a profile of the data where it's going to handle all of those different nuances and instances that you're going to come across. It's not perfect with that, but it's actually pretty good. So it's making that more scalable. Apart from as soon as you press run on the output, it's then going to go back and use that full data table. So you don't have to worry about turning sampling and filtering on and off. It's going to do that for you and makes that a lot easier to handle.
Oh, okay, that's great. And I see in your demo that we have one file upload on the Tableau prep. So if we have the additional file, like this one for January, and then next month we have another file, and the next month we have another one, does the Tableau prep rules apply automatically for the next file that we upload?
Depends on your connector. So where the repository of those files are. If I'm being brutally honest, the prep devs would love me to say, yeah, it's all fine. It's not quite, sadly. On your input, when you're connected to CSVs and Excels, etc., you can point to a folder rather than an individual file link and use asterisk, so what's classed as that wildcard union. You have wildcard union inputs. If you want to know more about that, the how-to post is out there. The UI has changed a little bit over time around how you set that up, but the techniques are still there and still relevant. There are a couple of connectors when new files come in, it doesn't pick them up as automatically as you'd love them to. So what I'm going to say is connect up using the wildcard union, but then test as a new file come in. Just go and do that validation to make sure that is being read through.
Oh, okay, that's great. Thanks so much for your tips.
Well, thank you for the questions. Anyone else?
I've experienced that firsthand, and I didn't think that all of those are working as expected with the wildcard union, and then you're using a different data source, and then no, it's not supported. And it's not necessarily documented either.
Yeah, there's a couple of bits I'm working on with the prep devs at the moment. The joy of being a visionary is that I can just go and throw loads of feedback at them. So I have a really long Google Doc that they're slowly working their way through over time. So converting dates and other things like that, they've squeezed in parameters, new rows, all of those are Jenny and I just poking the devs over the years along with other people. So yeah, that's fun dare I say, to always get that right. So there's a few things to come, but we're getting closer with it.
Yeah, there's some new spatial features now on the latest version, which is pretty cool.
There
So
are,
question
but there's no map way to see it, annoyingly. But anyway, I'll keep poking the bear on that one. If you were just about to say about Fatima's question, yeah, I just saw that. Are the validation checkpoints available within Prep? Yes and no. There is a couple of hidden features that aren't truly hidden; they're just not used that widely around this idea of city roles, etc., where you can go and kind of do provide it almost a list that it can go and check against URLs, other things like that. It's okay, it's there, but it's not probably the validation that you mean. At the end of the day, business data and organizational data is so bespoke to the business rules that you put around it. Do we have full semantic modeling, which is a term that you might come across further down the way? No, that's not what Prep's for. But what you do have is that ability to see the data. And as I mentioned, that's where the tear came out of my eye when I looked at Maestro originally. The tool that became Tableau Prep was I spent my time building histogram after histogram to go and view the data to see whether it was all there, do those record counts, see what dimensions are there. But Prep's profile pane, that middle bit within the clean step, that's what it's doing. So in so many ways, you can build rules if you want to as calculations and filters and checks within your data set. We've definitely done that for clients over the years. But really, it's that eyeballing the data and seeing it, the power of visualization that really, that's where we find the mistakes within most data sets. And I cannot count how many clients we've had that just like, no, that's not in the data. Yep, that actually is in the data. Okay, I need to fix some things. So that's the journey that you go on once you start seeing it. I think the benefit of Prep is also, unlike SQL scripts and rules engines, you can see what's going on. You can turn your laptop screen around and share that with colleagues. That really helps them understand what those issues are too. So there is some other functionality around identifying duplicates. I'm not a fan of it. I don't think it was that well implemented. Happy to talk about that at some other point. So there are other bits out there with Prep, but it's probably not what you're after in terms of that full validation Fatima by asking that question.
Yeah, what I do sometimes, and probably you do as well, is that since you can have those branches, so when you're following along a flow and then you have a branch and then you do an aggregation just to validate that the numbers at least are there, but it's without any necessary, well, of course you can add those calculations to see if they're above or below something and then trigger a separate output or something.
Absolutely. Oh, good. Thanks, Fatima. Any other final questions before we call time today?
I can make an input for the mentees that they will have a project coming this week. That's the plan, that we're going to share some data where you will go from end to end, meaning that you need to use Prep to clean and shape your data before you can then use desktop to build your visualization and get the insights. So we're planning on getting that out for you this week.
Cool. All right. What I've done is I've just stuck my email address in the chat. So I am always open for questions around Prep, or I feature ideas as well. I love feeding those into the devs. As I say, I'm really lucky to have a bit of a channel to do that. So if you're using Prep and you're struggling on something, let me know. I'm happy to talk about it and try to help out where I can and when I can. But also, yeah, if you've got ideas, love to hear them too. So yeah, thank you again for having me along today. And yeah, appreciate you all dialing in.
Thank you for taking the time, Carl, and I'll see you in a week then.
Sounds good. See you in hopefully sunny San Diego.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
And as usual, we'll share the recording and everything. I think Carl already has shared the link to his presentation, the slides, so you'll find that as well. But there's Prasan as well. Hello. So just mention about this project, mention about the recording, and then the slides that should be available for them, or it is available. Carl already shared those.
Yeah.
Do you have anything extra to share?
No, I don't think so. We had a check with the mentors. Only one thing we need to check with all of you. Folks, we need to know if you have a measurable end goal. by the end of this program that this is something you want to achieve, or let's say grow design skills or grow just desktop. So that is essentially needed, and you need to have this conversation with your mentors, if you haven't done that. So that is the only thing. And we'll share the project and also share the next set of plans. Next week, there will be no sessions. There is Tableau conference, and we'll share the links as well. I think there will be some of the sessions that will be live on Salesforce Plus. So, so Steve, are you going or not?
He's not coming. I have
Oh,
replaced Steve with
Yeah.
Dawn for our presentation.
You're doing the templates thing now.
Yeah.
Nice.
But and that's not going to be recorded, I think. But there will be a lot of stuff on Salesforce Plus. So if you haven't signed up for Salesforce Plus, do that. And then there's a lot of the sessions that will be streamed live, and a lot of even more that will be recorded that you can watch after. And of course, for those that are not recorded or streamed live, a lot of them will be available in coming user groups as well. So if some of you see some of those presentations that are not streamed and you would really love to see it, just let us know, because then we can reach out to these people and ask if they would like to come to this program and share as well.
Sounds good. Okay. Hi, Shri.
Hey,
Did you have a question as well, or?
can I have this question once everyone is off? Yes.
That's sure. Is there anyone who has a question for everyone, or for for me and Prasan, or Steve? If not, then I guess you're free to go for now, and we'll see each other after TC. And Shri has a question for me and Prasan, so then the rest of you can leave. Please leave. See you next time.
Thank you. We can go ahead, Shri.
I have not been able to have a session with my mentor yet.
Mhm.
I reached out to him few times on LinkedIn. He gave me a couple of sessions timings, and I was available for those sessions, but he didn't log in, or he was not able to get in touch. And then again, I gave him some time, and then again I messaged him. He just said hello, and then after that again, there has been no response at all.
Okay, that's not good.
Yeah. So I think for that, we need to update you. I think Nick wasn't able to communicate this to you, but it's a good thing as well as a bad thing for us. But in a good thing, Nick just got promoted to a senior leadership role. So I can understand. It's becoming hard for him to do anything, so stepping off the program. But
Yeah.
it's not like you won't have a mentor. So that will take care of. And so till now, did you had any sessions, Sri?
No, not at all.
No,
So
okay.
twice he gave me a time slot saying, hey, be available at this time, and both times I was available. But then at that time I didn't hear much. And then again I gave him some time, like 1 month, and then again I reached out just recently. He said hello, and then again there has been no response.
Got it. So sorry, but how should we solve this? Where should
Yeah,
we?
it's the same issue then, I guess, with Godfrey. He hasn't mentioned anything about it, but he was here today. So we need to check. Either we need to check with the existing mentors if they are willing to take you, or well, not willing, but if they have capacity to take you and Godfrey in, either separate you or be on the same team, or we need to find a new mentor for you. That is not up for promotion, so, I guess. So of course
Yeah.
we're sorry that this has happened, and I wish that you would have mentioned this a bit earlier as well, so we could push and get a resolution for this. But let me and Prasan think a bit about this and check with the other mentors and see if they have, as I said, the availability.
Yeah.
If
Yeah, no
not,
problem.
then we'll reach out and try to get someone else to help you.
Yeah, no problem. I just wanted to give him space because I know you would be busy with other things. So I just waited, and thought maybe when we have a session like this, I can reach out and have a word.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you.
And the session on the Tableau buddy was actually well received in Toronto.
Nice. That's really good to hear. Did you enjoy it? That's the most important thing.
Initially, until the time I got onto the stage, it was I was dreading it. But then once I got on the stage, I was okay.
Yeah. Everybody
Yeah,
has to.
how it should be.
Yeah.
I've been doing this for a long time, and even I'm a bit nervous when I go on stage or when I start presenting or something. But then when people hopefully laugh at my jokes or they are smiling and they're happy, then and everything is working, then you relax, especially if you of course have practiced and prepared a bit. But yeah, it's good to be a bit nervous before you start.
Thank you. That's all I just wanted to share.
Thank you, Sri.
Thank you.
Just
Thank you.
stop recording.
Yeah.